Hello, everyone. To many of you who are with us for the first session of the Emerging Leadership track, welcome back. To those of you who were elsewhere, welcome to the Emerging Leadership breakout session for this afternoon. My name is Christine Peterson. I am on the committee for the Emerging Leadership track for WT2. And this afternoon, we are very excited to be able to have three incredible presenters share their expertise. And so this is going to be sort of a TED Talk style, so each is going to come up and present their work. And first we have Pratima Rao Gluckman, who is an engineer leader here at VMware, and her presentation is Persistent and Inclusive Leadership. So Pratima, thank you.
Can they hear me? TED Talk style. I'm nervous. Anyways. Thank you for coming. It's an exciting day. I want to start off with depressing stuff first, because I want to get you all depressed, and then I want action. So every year, Fortune magazine lists its Fortune 500 companies based on their prior year of fiscal revenues. And in 2015, if you look at this chart, there were 24 women running these 500 companies. In 2016, the number dipped to 21. We had promising news in 2017, yay. We went up to 32 women. So in terms of percentages, it's between 4.2 and 6.4%. A person who was editing my speech, she said, Pratima, just say 4 to 6%. It doesn't make a difference. I'm like, no, the 4.2 and the 6.4 makes a big difference. So I'm going to stick with 4.2 to 6.4. So that's promising news. But I still think it's 45% too low. Don't you agree? Yeah. In March 2014, there's a woman named Judith Warner, who is, she's a fellow at the Center of American Progress. She documented that at this current rate of change, we will not see equality of men and women at the top until 2085. I'm going to repeat this again because I really want you to internalize this. This is the depressing thing, right? So you're not going to see equality at the top, men and women, until 2085. So that is 66 years from now. Even our youngest daughters will be retired by then. My only daughter, who's 5 years old, will not live in a world that is representative of male and female leaders. And she won't see this until her 70s. So this realization broke my heart, and there are times I get emotional about it. And I thought about how to create that change. So what are the milestones that we need to achieve to get to 2085? That's what I'm going to talk about. This is the positive stuff, but I need a call to action here. But I'm impatient. I want it in 2025. Who doesn't want this in 2025? We all want this sooner, right? We're not waiting till 2085. I'll be dead. My daughter will be in her 70s. I don't want that for her. So I'm impatient, very impatient. So let's start with a problem statement. The reason we can't get to 50-50 today is we lose girls and women all the time. And there's three places where we lose them. We lose them in the hiring period. Once we do get past the hiring bump and we hire women into the workforce, we can't retain them. And if we can retain these women, we can't grow them. And this is why we don't quite see that change at the top. So let's talk about just the hiring bias. So we hire people who are like us. I do that all the time. I catch myself. But we do that. We tend to hire people who are just like us. We've also found that men are judged on their potential, while women are judged on their performance. I'm a hiring manager, and I see that all the time at interview panels. They'll be like, oh, she wasn't confident. She didn't do that well on that problem we gave her. Or they'll say, oh, you know what, the guy has so much potential. I mean, he didn't do that well, but I see potential in him. And so we just get judged on our performance all the time. And then the pipeline dwindles over the years. And it's because of imposter syndrome. I was at Carnegie Mellon University last month. I was supporting Girls of Steel Robotics. This was a all-girls team building this cool robot, and they're participating in this robotic competition. I've never built a robot, and I do tech. I was inspired by these girls because they get to build a robot, they get to design it, they get to drive it, and they get to participate in this competition. But when I talked to them, the core was confidence. They still had no confidence. And they had this imposter syndrome. It was amazing to see. I was just like, oh my God. And that's because of stereotype threat. We have that in the sense that girls don't do math. On this drive team that we talked about to the girls, there were other teams that were co-ed. They had boys and girls. The boys would be like, girls can't use drills. Oh, you can't use a drill, you're a girl. And so all these messages create this thing called stereotype threat. And so we lose girls even before they can get to this pipeline. Let's talk about growth. Paternity leave is big. And I found this through this woman named Elena Percival, who's the CEO of Women Who Code. And she said something very interesting to me, and I didn't quite think about it. She said, when dads are not given paternity leave, what happens is they're not there to support their partner. It's their child, not her child. And what happens is then bad habits start creeping in from that time. Once the woman goes off, has a baby, and she's at home with no support because we give 1 week paternity leave to the men or to their spouses, and so the women don't get support. And so one of the things we need to do is have paternity leave. And I'm very proud to work at a company, VMware, that has 18 weeks of paternity leave. And so I tell the men on the team, you're not skiing. You're going home to support the woman or your partner, but no skiing, no, don't be on the mountains. It's not 18 weeks of vacation. You also find that women actually don't get very strategic projects, and I'll talk a little bit about that in my next slide, about growth. So Telly Whitney, who is the co-founder of Grace Hopper, she said something very interesting. She said, women are over-mentored and under-sponsored. And so I'll tell you the difference between mentors and sponsors. Mentors talk with you, sponsors talk about you. So you want people to talk about you. And we don't see women going up the ladder because we don't get sponsored enough at our jobs. So that's important. Everyone says get a mentor, but I actually say get a sponsor. And the thing that we also don't have is we don't have role models, because we don't have women running, as CEOs. Like when you don't see a female CEO, then you feel like that's not possible for you. If you don't see a female SVP, you don't feel like it's possible for you. So we lack role models. And so these are some of the things that actually disallow us from growing in our careers. So through my research for the last 2 years, as I wrote my book, and I spoke to tons of women, and I spoke to women like you, where I delivered a lot of talks last year, I found that it's both persistent and inclusive. And the reason I brought this is what's happened right now with the whole diversity and inclusion is, oh, the woman needs to do this. The woman needs to build her brand. I'll actually talk about all that. But they're always putting the onus on the woman. It's a lot of burden on us, right? And we talk about the woman leaning in, but we don't talk about society and organizations leaning in. And so we need organizations and community to lean in. So you want the woman to lean in, but it's two to tango. You can't get to that tango dance without two people. And so you need that. And what I've come up with is just persistent and inclusive. Persistent is what you can do as an individual. And inclusive is what we need our community and our organizations to do. So persistent leadership, and this is where it's blah, 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 but it's important. So first thing is being authentic. This is important because what happens is we come into a male-dominated industry and we start acting like the men. So if you look at successful women today, Hillary Clinton, Carly Fiorina, Meg Whitman, what's common? They all have short hair. They all want to look like men. A woman like me with long hair, I love to get my nails done, I love to wear dresses. It's hard to be taken seriously in the workforce. But you have to bring your authentic self to work. You can't be like the men because you're not going to succeed. So you have to be true to yourself and come into work And this morning I was watching Joy. She actually had her nails painted. I was like, yeah. Being brave. This is one thing, and I talked about CMU. There's this woman called Reshma Saujani, who was the founder of Girls Who Code. She said something very interesting. She said, we raise our boys to be brave, and we raise our girls to be perfect. Which is very true, don't you think? We want to be perfect. We want to have the perfect hair, the perfect bodies. We want a perfect partner. That never happens. My sister-in-law is actually in the crowd, so. Yes. And what happens is, because we have to be perfect, we don't want to take any risks. We don't want to fail. And that's what I found with these young girls at CMU. When I finally asked them, I said, what is it? They said, oh, I don't want to take a risk because I have to do everything perfectly. And and this is high school kids. Where is it coming from? It's how we raise our boys and girls. And so my daughter, I think my sons are getting less brave, but she's going. I'm probably tipping it and screwing up, but the third thing is sponsors, and I talked about this, enlisting sponsors. And I'll talk about the difference with how men and women operate when it comes to sponsors. So take Pat Gelsinger. His mentor was Andy Grove. He always says, Andy Grove's my mentor. But Andy Grove was the guy who actually found something in Pat when he came in to work at Intel. There was something about him. He called him and he said, you did a shitty job on something in 2 weeks. I need you to come and do something, right? He challenged Pat. So what men tend to do is they pick mentors who are also their sponsors. And it's not like they do it consciously. It's just very unconscious, right? They look at powerful guys or powerful people who have that authority, and they basically gravitate towards them, and they get mentorship feedback as well as sponsorship. Whereas women tend to, we tend to talk to a lot of people who really aren't in those strategic positions, who can't really advocate for us, who can't really lift us, and so we tend to be over-mentored and under-sponsored. So I talked about authenticity, I talked about bravery, and how do you get sponsors? There's like 2 things to do. First, just be good at what you do. I mean, that's what these women talked about this morning at the panel. Just be good. If you're an engineer, be good at your craft. If you're a product manager, be good at your craft. Second is get visibility. Brag about it. Really, brag about it. Don't do great work in your cube and not talk about it. So talk to people who are high up in the organization. Be savvy. Demo stuff to them. Do that. Be ambitious. Be assertive. Be all that. But that's the way to do it. You have to find people who will notice you. So be good at what you do, but brag about it, and there's no shame in it. Men love to brag. Why can't we brag? So brag about it. So why inclusive leadership? And this is what I talked about. This, I think, is key to getting us to 2025. And if we don't keep making that change, it won't be 2085. It might be 3025. Who knows? If we don't start doing something about it now. And I talk about just not having individual strategies that I talked about, but having collective strategies where you can have society and you can have the organizations lean in to help us grow. So the 3 things in inclusive is male allies. We need men on our side. So when we talk about diversity and inclusion, we ignore the men, right? Like men feel like, Ray O'Farrell said he's afraid. And I'm so happy you're here. Sitting right here, awesome. But we need male allies, and we need to get them on our side. We can't be sitting and just women talking. We need men to be in the conversation. We need them to be walking this journey with us. Equal partnership at home, I think this is important. Let me tell you a story about my husband. When my husband's a stay-at-home dad, which is great because then I get to do all this awesome stuff. One day he came to me and he said, Pratima, I'm taking care of all these 3 kids. This is how much you should pay me. And he had a spreadsheet. It was like $6,000 a month. I said, you know how much I make? I can't afford this. But he was right. How many of us actually do that? If I was stay at home and he was working, I don't think I would even thought about that. But kudos to the guy, he actually thought about it. And there's research that women who stay home and take care of the kids, they lose out close to an average of $115,000 a year. That's a lot of money. And that's a job I can't do. This is vacation for me, away from my kids. That's 24/7, oh my God. And we need to get rewarded for that work. And so he asked me for that. So equal partnership at work, that's important to be able to have that conversation with your partners. Change will happen when we can do that. Because then we can go schmooze, we can go get that drink in the evening, we can go network with the men, we can do all that, and the guy is doing all the work. So let's do that. The third thing I love is career interventions. And I love to talk about this career interventions because all of us are empowered to make an intervention in someone's life. And I want you to know that. And I'll tell you the story about this woman, Dr. Orna Berry, who is the first female chief scientist in Israel. She's a celebrity. I was actually at Israel. I was in Israel last year, and the moment I stepped out and I said, oh, I'm meeting Dr. Orna Berry, and everyone knew her. Like literally, even the Uber driver knew her. It was crazy. But she told me the story, and actually, I don't know how many people are here who are from Israel, but they're crazy about getting PhDs. I have no idea why. They all need to get a PhD. And so she told me that she wanted to, after her master's, she wanted to go get a job. And she was driving her professor home. And he told her, Orna, I'll tell you that, I won't tell you you're smart, but there are dumber people than you who have PhDs. And he asked her to go get a PhD. He said he'd give her a recommendation letter. And that changed the course of her life. She went off and she became a serial entrepreneur. She's a celebrity. And when I was in Israel, there was this story that her hair was graying and people were upset that she had gray hair. So it was like a crazy, I was landing there and I was like, oh my God, this is, they're talking about this woman whose hair's graying. And I was like, and that's in the news. So she's that popular. So she had this career intervention. And I think it's very important for all of us to know that we can make that intervention with the women in our lives. That is very true. You can say something positive or say something to change that, change that course for that person. And the one thing that Telly Whitney talks about male allies, and I want to switch back to this, is she says, what you measure, you will change. And Ray O'Farrell talked about this morning. He said their executive bonuses are tied to diversity and inclusion, which means we're getting serious about it. And what we're trying to do is we're tying these bonuses, we're making it a priority. We're trying to get at least one female on the board of public companies. I know that upset some people, but I'm actually very happy. I'm actually sad that we had to force the hand, but I'm actually happy that we're making that a priority. We're saying, hey, you know what? For diversity, we need that. We need at least one female on the board. And what that means is like what you measure, you will change. And that's important. So I talked about this, career interventions. So why do we all care? And do you care? And this is important, right? So I just want to wrap up because I'm running out of time. So persistence is actually just you. It's on the individual. It's authentic leadership, being brave, enlisting your sponsors, and inclusive. And this is where we also need to work on the inclusive piece because we need to get the male allies to, and we have to break all these stereotypes. We need to have those conversations, equal partnership, and we need to start having these informal interventions. So I just want all of you to do just one thing, either this week or next week, to make this happen so we can move this needle. That could be anything that you do. You could go get a sponsor. You can take a risk. You can have that conversation with whoever you want to have a conversation with if there's, if you want equal partnership at home, so you could focus on your career. Or you can enlist male allies. So there's one thing, I just want all of you to think about one thing that you can do for yourselves and for your organizations so we can start making this change. And I want to see it in 2025. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have